On today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, we'll be bringing in Adam Denker, the host of the Locked On Lightning podcast, to discuss the offseason that was for the Tampa Bay Lightning, losing a few key pieces to their recent Stanley Cup runs. We're also going to talk about some of the extensions on the Tampa Bay Lightning that are going to keep them there for more than half a decade, and we're going to discuss how their most recent Stanley Cup run compared to the last two. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome to this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and the Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast your first listen of the day. Let me introduce myself for everyone on the Tampa Bay Lightning feed. My name is Armando Velez. You can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. And thankful once again for doing yet another crossover edition of the show with the host of Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning, Adam Denker. Adam, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, Armando. We're slowly but surely crawling towards the beginning of the season. I feel like this is probably the longest summer we've had, or actually the longest pause in action, if you want to call it, since actually the days of COVID. Cannot stress how bad. I can't wait for this season to start. And our teams have made some moves. Yours has been a little bit more notable than mine, but excited for the season and the that fight in the Atlantic Division to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's big anticipation going into opening night. But hey, we got some NFL football in the meantime. In between, both yours and my NFL teams got some dubs this weekend. Your New York Giants, my Miami Dolphins, got some dubs this weekend. So in the meantime, we have that to fill the sports void in our lives right before preseason hockey, just in just a few weeks now. But let's get right into it, man. You're the team that you cover. Mostly the impression that I got from the Tampa Bay Lightning was really they were rewarding the guys who really got them their cups. Of course, 3 straight Stanley Cup appearances, and of course we live in a cap world, and of course the big losses of Andre Palat and trading Ryan McDonough to the Nashville Predators, getting Philippe Myers back, and then extending him for a year. Was the impression I got was, okay, we're up against the cap. There are players who have got us there, though from the Julien Brisebois perspective. So as far as paying them, it's the way I say it is like a thank you for winning the cup. Let's continue to run it back. What's your impression of it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was 100%, a thank you for winning us the cup. And yeah, it's one of those things where in the moment, I mean, we kind of felt like it was about to come, the extensions for all the guys that didn't really have their extensions long term. And yeah, it's a thank you, but at the same time, it's just like, you look at the checkbook the other night. But you know what, it's very well deserved. You got to keep your guys while you can. We all know how tough it is. Very high quality players in this business. So, if you could extend your guys for 8 more years and give them, the much needed money that they want, then you know what, you're gonna have to deal with it. But at the same time, they're gonna have to come out and produce. I was talking about this on my show, how with Eric Chernak being one of those high extension guys, is that, yeah, that's a great extension for Chernak, but at the same time, he is an aging defenseman, which, I hope the Lightning did take into account. They did give that same extension, obviously a little bit of maybe of a higher dollar figure to Ryan McDonough not too long ago. So, you're going to see over time, him unfortunately not really be as worth in terms of performance to this contract. But that's why, they gave it to him because, he also brings that leadership mentality, which, you can't find really much of in today's game.
Yeah, and I remember just Eric Chernak playing a lot of time with Victor Hedman as well. Daily Faceoff actually has him projected as in the second pair with Mikhail Sergachev. For the people on the Panthers feed, the following extensions that were given to the Tampa Bay Lightning were Eric Chernak, Anthony Sorelli, and Nick Paul, who they recently traded from the Ottawa Senators in the trade deadline of last year. So but also, Adam, I must say, even though the Tampa Bay Lightning lost in the Stanley Cup Final this time around, I thought this might have been their most impressive run in the Stanley Cup playoffs, based on the adversity that they faced, based on the mileage that has been on their bodies as well. And for the first time in the 3 years that they made the final, they were down 2 games one time to the New York Rangers. So that was they've been behind in series in their first 2 Stanley Cup runs, but the fact that they were able to still crawl back from 2-0 against New York. Of course, we all know what happened against the Florida Panthers, but I thought this was a very impressive run from the Tampa Bay Lightning, especially with all the mileage.
Yeah, it was definitely impressive. I mean, there were some things that you could take from the other runs as well that could probably be just as equally impressive. But I would say that what was really most impressive about this, and I'm sure you could agree, was the fact that, there was a lot of times in each series where they had teams slap them right back in the face. Even in the Florida series, there was moments where Florida came out really feisty at certain points in the games, and the Lightning were able to weather the storm. And I really think that's what you saw a lot differently from this team this time out. Even though it didn't end up in a Stanley Cup victory, I don't think I could say here confidently that, especially in the bubble back in 2020, that we could say that this Lightning team would have been able to handle some of the onslaughts that they saw. Especially, I don't think they would have been able to win a series like the one they had against Toronto in the first round. That was an insane round within itself. And I don't think a 2020 Lightning team would have been able to win that series. Maybe 21, a little bit more rested, but and it really, what it comes down to is the evolution of this team and really the maturity that this team has been able to collect over the last couple of years. And so I think you're right. I think this team was a lot different. I think in many ways a lot better. And you could see by the tough run that they had that they were able to weather the storm and still go back to the Stanley Cup Final and even be down to a team and even have a chance at coming back and beating a team like, the eventual Stanley Cup champs, the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, and let's not forget a 2-0 hole that they faced on the road against the New York Rangers, against Igor Shesterkin. A very close Game 3 that really turned the series around for them as well in that Eastern Conference Final as well. So I want to also talk about the start of the season for the Tampa Bay Lightning coming up. Some injuries that, according to Cap Friendly, one of them say Zach Bugosian and Anthony Sorelli. What are their statuses going into the beginning of the season?
Sorelli, we're probably not going to see him for a little while. Just some stuff, weathered injuries over from that last playoff run. Probably going to miss him for the first couple of weeks of the season. Bogo, I expect him to be back. But I was talking on actually the show I recorded earlier today that, the Lightning, the good thing about them is that they're not afraid to go to their farm system. They're not afraid to get some guys from Syracuse and bring them to Tampa, and not only to fill roles, but those guys also have experience at the NHL level. So a lot of the times when they go into their farm system, you're not necessarily worried about what's coming back in terms of an experience, because a lot of these guys have been at the NHL level sparingly here and there. So, and that's part of the reason why you saw Julian Brisebois get a guy like Philip Myers back from Nashville, extend him a little bit, because they also got Ian Cole this offseason, but you kind of figured with Bogo and also certain defensemen going down at certain times, it's good to have that depth that the Lightning are so well known for, kind of have that in their back pocket. So, you're going to have guys here and there hit the injury table. I mean, that's just a normal yearly occurrence now for the Lightning. Next guy up attitude, and but it's not going to be end worlders that we might see some with some other teams. So yeah, that's what we got for our injuries this year.
Yeah, and I remember seeing a chart of the amount of players who have gone through Syracuse and getting to the NHL from the Tampa Bay Lightning system, and it really dates all the way back to their previous GM in Steve Yzerman, and just Julien Brisebois was able to take that to Stanley Cup victory and just continuing that that for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But we're going to transition over to the next segment where Adam is going to ask me Florida Panthers related questions on the upcoming season. We're going to talk about that next. But first, we're going to tell you all about Athletic Greens. And our next partner is something that I've been using more often because, sometimes coffee can be a little addicting if you drink a little bit of it too much. And, instead of drinking 2 or 3 cups of coffee, maybe transition over to Athletic Greens. And what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, adaptogen to help start your day off right. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
All right, Armando. So the time has come because I have really been waiting all off season to ask you these questions because I have to say, and I think a lot of people could agree that, the Florida Panthers have really, really had one of the more interesting off seasons in recent memory. And they're an interesting team to watch. Well, they were an interesting team to watch going into the off season because like you alluded to before, not exactly a very ideal ending to the season. After what they did during the regular season, winning the President's Trophy. So, and unfortunately losing to us again. So, but you guys went out there and made the move that needed to be made. Very surprisingly, you lost Jonathan Huberdeau in the process, but you brought back with you one of the bigger guys in terms of superstardom, I think, in the NHL, and that's Matthew Kachuk. First of all, since this is the first time we've actually kind of spoken since then, what were your initial reactions when this happened? Were you shocked? Were you surprised? Are you skeptical about the future? Last season was his first 100-point season, and now he's getting all this money. Are you in any? Well, first of all, before I ask any more, initial reactions to this transaction?
It was finding out at 11 p.m. and then about to go to sleep. And then going from about to go to sleep at 11 p.m. to not being able to go to sleep until 3 a.m. because of the amount of conversations I was having with people around the Panthers media sphere and also the people around Panthers Twitter, joining some Twitter spaces that night. And the thing is, I had to work really early that next morning, like a 10-hour shift at my day job on a Saturday. So it was a not so good Saturday as far as how tired I was at work, but it was encouraging knowing that this trade was pulled off. And I made an episode a few days before saying how it's encouraging because even if the trade doesn't get pulled off, that Florida is a destination franchise for the NHL, that people want to come here now, versus people just wanting to come here and retire. So now they want to actually come in their youth and be here for a long time. And that's what happened with Matthew Kachuk. And the fact that he's getting his first 100-point season at age 24 instead of age 29, that's where you're starting to enter your prime years. And comparing the Claude Giroux and Ben Sherratt trade and trading first rounders that time, it hurts a little more, the fact that they didn't get the cup and you only spent like 20 plus regular season games plus the postseason versus this time around, you're trading a first round pick. Yeah, you're trading Jonathan Huberdeau, an expiring contract, and Mackenzie Weegar, an expiring contract, but 2 key cornerstone pieces of your team at the time still, and a promising prospect in Cole Schwint. You're trading that, but you're trading that for years worth of possible production and years in his prime versus, and also they're banking on the salary cap going up. And a lot of people aren't really talking about how much of a weight Bobrovsky's contract had to do with why the trade happened as well, because if the Florida Panthers were to sign Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar, that would have had them like right at the throat of the salary cap. Yeah. And Mackenzie Weegar was always going to be seen as a rental. Jonathan Huberdeau, who knows what that contract's going to look like towards the tail end. You spoke about it in the last segment about Chernak. Now we're talking about it for a forward and a winger in Jonathan Huberdeau. Who knows what that's going to look like towards the tail end. So what is the more sure thing towards the tail end? So 1 to 2 year window for this team, and a sense of urgency for the Panthers had they kept Huberdeau. It would have been desperation time for the Panthers. And with the lack of assets up against the cap with Keith Yandel's buyout on the books this year, I just saw that Tampa Bay Lightning has $0 of dead cap this year, which is great for them, position for them to be in. But $6.4 million for the Panthers, it's a little bit of a resetting type of year, but $15 million next year. And of course, Bill Daly talking about the cap going up significantly in 2 off seasons. At least that's the hope. There'll possibly be more flexibility around this Florida Panthers team over the long term. Yeah, their defense core is going to take a hit this season, but hey, the Florida Panthers believe in a guy like Gustav Forsling to be on that top pair with Aaron Ekblad. Radko Gudas is on an expiring deal as well, but they're also going to rely on Matt Kiersteads of the world, Lucas Carlson's, maybe Michael Delzato as well for the Panthers. So that they're going to be looking to some of those guys to fill in, plug in the holes here and there for its defense core for the Panthers.
Yeah, and you brought up a name I actually wanted to talk about, and that was Aaron Ekblad. Has had a pretty rough go of it in terms of injury over the last couple of years. What kind of production are you looking at of him over these next couple of weeks, and then obviously going into the NHL season? What are you looking at of Ekblad? Are you starting to see maybe a decline in this year, or are you starting to see more of the same from Ekblad, and how can he stay healthy?
I see a very motivated Aaron Ekblad because I see him he was part of the BioSteel camp up in Toronto along with Sam Bennett just a few weeks ago. AP Hockey Group is always posting videos of him at the Panthers rink doing some drills. Ryan Lomberg is also a player there. South Florida native, Minnesota Wild player Brandon Duhaime has also been there as well. And Aaron Ekblad just got married this off season, so maybe it's a little bit of a different step for him. I mean, Bobrovsky having a kid elevated his game last off season, so that could possibly play a role in that. And of course, with Jonathan Huberdeau gone, I don't know how the ladder works as far as leadership, who is a hierarchy outside of the person who has the C. But now with how long Aaron Ekblad has been with the Panthers, I mean, it's crazy to think now he's in his ninth year with the team. With now Huberdeau gone, Aaron Ekblad basically by default is second in line as far as leader in the locker room. Maybe right behind him is Bobrovsky or Kachuk, and there as well, because Kachuk does have a leadership he has leadership in him as well. So that's definitely an opportunity for Ekblad to step up as a leader. As far as injuries, we can't predict when these things happen. Of course, 2 years ago it was one leg. This past year was just another. But the most recent one wasn't as severe as the first. So that's a positive sign for Aaron Ekblad. So we're just hoping that he is back to full health. He seems, from all the videos that I've seen, even though there's only so much that we can draw from that, is that he looks to be very mobile, and he's going to be able to start the season for the Panthers.
What are we looking at as Spencer Knight this year? I really thought he was going to be your starting goaltender after what he did a couple of years ago. But it looked like Bobrovsky took that back this past year. So what is that combination going to look like this year? Is it going to be more of Sergei's net, or are we still going to see split time between those two guys?
I think we're going to still Paul Maurice has that reputation of like riding his number one. So we're gonna see 55 plus more than likely from Sergei Bobrovsky, pending performance, of course, seeing where it goes from there. But the encouraging thing for this front office is for Sergei Bobrovsky to get a good portion of the starts. Of course, after a certain amount of time, you want Spencer to get that full load. He hasn't played a full season yet. So he is going to be an RFA this next offseason coming up. So it's going to be one of the most expensive goalie tandems already in the NHL without him even getting his bridge deal just yet. So and of course I made a whole episode relating the Jake Ottinger deal, him getting $4 million. So and Spencer Knight doesn't have the workload that Jake Ottinger has right now for the Dallas Stars. So we can expect for sure somewhere under 4 for Spencer Knight, somewhere around 2.5 to maybe 3.5 and get maybe like 30 to 35 games for Spencer Knight. But he struggled a little bit last year, especially in December, but he found a way to improve his game around later in the season, played a lot better towards the end. So that's an encouraging sign. And it's not, I know they brought in Alex Lyon, who won an AHL championship with the Chicago Wolves. They brought in Andrew Hammond, the Hamburglar. Not really. I don't think he's going to be much of a competition for Spencer Knight. But there is an opportunity. He's still waiver exempt, so there's opportunities to send him down if you need to give him a few games. But the hope is to still keep him up here, get him a few reps with the best talent in the world in NHL hockey players. So that's the hope for this management, but also give more of the starts to Bobrovsky so that cap hit next year isn't so high for the Panthers.
I'm very much impressed with this Panther. I'm excited to go into battle against you guys in the season. And now that you guys got, I guess, Owen Tippett and Huberdeau, that was a great player right there. But now that you have a little bit more of that star power, a little bit more, in Matthew Kachuk, I'm even more excited to go against you guys. And remember, my Lightning fans go and chip in on Armando in the middle of the season, see how they're doing. Give them some slack when we play against them, because this is probably going to be the best NHL season between these two rivals in a very long time. And it's going to be an interesting season. I think that the Lightning still have some question marks, even though we spoke about it. We didn't really get to it on the show, but they do have some question marks that pull around. But it's going to be a great season between these two clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, let's transition over to segment number 3, a quick segment number 3, and we're going to discuss about futures and where we expect these teams to finish next. We'll discuss that next here on this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning. Third and final segment here on this crossover edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning. And Adam, for these two teams, even though they're bringing most of their core back for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Florida went through their fair share of changes. Of course, the life cycles that these two teams in are obviously different based on Florida just getting out of the first round for the first time in 26 years. Tampa Bay going to 3 straight Stanley Cups, winning 2 of them. Where do you see as far as regular season finishes for the Tampa Bay Lightning? Where are you seeing them?
I think we're going to see them finish about in the same spot they did last year. That was 3rd in the division. I think that John Cooper saw the tick and fatigue, especially late in the playoffs, that Rangers series at certain times, and especially in the final against the Avalanche. I think he's going to manage things a little bit different this year. I don't think. The Lightning had in beginning of the season last year. Same time, there was still like injuries happening here, and so I think that John Cooper will go out and kind of with the same mentality though that we kind of had last year in terms of let's just get into the playoffs. But I don't think we're going to be as right off the bat. I also think we might see a Tampa club that is still going to be figured out as we get into the new year. Just because, this team has been so fatigued over the last couple of years. I think there's going to be a lot of switching around on the roster, as well as I don't think we're going to see a lot out of Andrei Vasilevskiy early on. I think Andrei Vasilevskiy, he started 50 plus games for the first time in his career last year, and I think we're going to see a little bit less of that this year. So we're going to see a Tampa team that I think I wouldn't be shocked that in the last couple of weeks of the season, if Boston plays well, we might be in a conversation where we might see a team like the Boston Bruins, right on their coattails at the end of the season.
Wow, you're predicting the Bruins to still be in the race. I mean, those are one of the few teams that you can't bet against because they just every time you doubt them, they still find a way. One year has to be that year for the Bruins for them to go bye-bye, especially with all the injuries that they're going to be dealing with for the first 2 months of the season with Brad Marchand and Charlie McAvoy. Do you think the top three changes as far as the Atlantic Division, Toronto, Florida, Tampa Bay, or is it, or are any of the other Atlantic Division teams going to finish in the top three this year?
The top three is going to change, I think, and then these teams will fade out. I think we're going to see a lot of Detroit this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Ottawa's in the mix as well, but I mean, I don't think there's two teams that are ready to take any of those spots away from three. So, I still think we'll see it towards the end of the season, though. I still think they won't be in, the conversation in terms of or an actual threat of taking it, but I think they'll be kind of peeking over the fence and being like, all right, let's make some noise, but it'll be a little too late for those clubs.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. Toronto has a lot of question marks as well, as far as goaltending, but I think their defense in front of Matt Murray is a lot better than what they do have in Ottawa when he was there. And of course, what matters for Matt Murray is of course staying healthy there. Yeah. And for Tampa Bay, of course, they have the best goaltender in the division, and they have the best defenseman in the division as well in Victor Hedman. So those are the things that Tampa Bay does have going for them, and that's what's going to really keep this franchise continuing to be at least in the playoff conversation. And of course, in that top three, even if they're not sprinting towards the end, they've really had that marathon mentality from what I've seen. And the Panthers last year, they had that sprint towards the President's Trophy. I'm hoping that for the Panthers, it's more of a marathon type of approach for them. And but of course, a fast start for Barkov, especially in October, November, which is usually his months that he's a little slow. He mostly picks it up towards December and to the end of the season. So hoping for the Panthers that there's a little bit of pace as well, and hopefully this is a team that won't be fatigued once they do get to round two, because it seemed like that all their energy was exerted all throughout the regular season and even before round one against Washington, and it all just got exposed in round two. And of course, lack of adjustments too, more of the Panthers not putting their bodies on the line like Tampa Bay did. They didn't even make life hard for Andrei Vasilevskiy, let alone when pucks did eventually get to Vasi, he was able to make saves. So that's what I'm hoping for, a different approach for the Panthers as far as that pace. And of course, being able to put your body and helping your goalie out, just like what Tampa Bay did. And hey, first matchup for the Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning is an October 21st matchup at FLA Live Arena, just the Panthers' second home game of the season, right after opening night of the against the Philadelphia Flyers on the 19th. So Adam, it's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. And there's also a December game in Tampa that I'm hoping to get to as I live not too far from there. So really excited for the season for both our teams, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a hell of a season. I think this year is going to be off the charts in terms of crazy things happening. So, especially in the Atlantic Division. So, it's what better way to preview it than with your division rival? So excited for things to get started.
Yeah, and let's not be surprised if our teams both end up meeting in the playoffs once again for the right in the first 20 plus years of these two franchises, 0 playoff matchups, and there's a possibility that we could see 3 in a row, which means the state of Florida hockey, it's hyped up to what it should be, and definitely exciting. But Adam, I want to thank you for doing this crossover edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast and Locked On Tampa Bay Lightning podcast. For the people on my feed, tell them where they could follow you online.
You can follow the show at LO_Lightning on Twitter, as well as LockedOn_Lightning on Instagram. Give me a follow on Twitter at DenkyDank, DENKYD8NK. Love hearing from all of you guys, and make sure to subscribe to the pod on YouTube. And Armando, why don't you tell my listeners where they can find you?
They can follow me personally on Twitter at MondoMan12. Right before the preseason, you'll see a lot of course, Miami Dolphins takes. Panthers Media Day is September 21st, so you might be seeing a lot of tweets out of me of what the players are saying. And of course, the first preseason game is September 26th against the Nashville Predators, a split squad game. And of course, their prospect tournament is next week, where prospects of Tampa Bay, Carolina, and Nashville will all be facing off against each other in Raleigh, North Carolina. So exciting times ahead. So MondoMan12 for my personal account. The show Twitter page is at LO_FLA Panthers. And of course, you can follow Locked On Florida Panthers on YouTube. So thank you once again, Adam, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, I'll see you next time.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast so you'll be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast and YouTube feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden. We'll be covering all the offseason activities around the National Hockey League. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On NHL. Locked On experts give you a 30-minute podcast daily, Monday through Friday, on all things NHL. Subscribe to Locked On NHL on podcast and on YouTube. So I'm Armando Velez with Adam Denker. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.